Let's bring in Burney. He is a former chief of staff to Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, as well as former ambassador to the United States. Mr. Burney, good to see you this morning, though I do wish it were under different circumstances. Thanks for making the time.
It's indeed difficult times, probably the worst time in Canada-U.S. relations in my life, certainly in my lifetime. You know, Trump's sanctions are reckless, they're completely unwarranted, and they're contrary to basic trade norms, including, most significantly, the agreement that he signed with Canada just during his first term. You know, Vashi, it has all the earmarks of a New York-style gun-to-the-head shakedown. That's what it really seems like. It calls into question whether anybody should trust an agreement with this administration going forward. It's that serious. I can't believe this justification of a national emergency or public safety emergency. As you said, there's probably more fentanyl coming into Canada from the United States than going the other way. And when they move a battalion of Marines to the southern border, it points out that the emergency is on the southern border, not the northern border. If there's any influx of Canadians going into the United States, it's Canadians going to spend money in Florida, Arizona, and Hawaii during the winter. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
What do you think about the fact of the matter that these tariffs will, and though the president denies it to be the case, have an impact on American consumers? Do you anticipate in the medium term, for example, that will end up resonating, or do you think he really sees this as his tool to raise revenue and that will sort of be the be-all, end-all?
You know, he has a very quixotic view about tariffs. I don't know anybody in the world who shares it. He trumps, to use the phrase, the McKinley era in the United States, which was, 140 years ago. But he seems to forget the early 1930s, when the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of the then Republican government led to a world depression. Of course, it's going to increase costs for American consumers and producers. Of course, it's going to hinder any attempt to control inflation. Tariffs are not a solution to any problem in the economy. The Americans have problems on their national debt, which we help them address by buying treasury bills and other financial instruments, more important than anything else. So his whole line of thinking on tariffs is nutty.
We spoke last week about the relative silence, of politicians at the state level or even in Congress, combined with the relative silence of industry as well. Overnight, there are more of them speaking than there were last week. Do you think ultimately they will fight back against this, or is Trump's grip on power just too great for that to happen?
Congress has to be concerned about the manner in which he's usurping their authority for trade. After all, the Constitution gives Congress the authority to issue tariffs, not the president. This use of national emergency and public safety is a complete hoax, nothing else. So yes, there's already been some move in Congress by a couple of senators challenging, and I know that in the American business community, although they're all a bit intimidated, they are beginning to signal their concerns. So should the governors of states with whom Canada is the most important trading partner. And I think there are about 35 of them. There's lots of room for support in the United States. We've got to ignite that, and it should be a complete Team Canada approach. No time for partisan bickering about who did what to whom. This should be a united stand by Canada and the provinces and our business community against this unorthodox behavior by an irrational president.
Do you worry, based on that irrationality, of this getting even worse? And by that I mean we've already seen him talk about the prospect of if there are counter tariffs, the original tariffs could escalate. Are you worried about that?
I think we have to be concerned about it, but we have to provoke a negotiation in some way. And I fully support what the government is doing. It's a reasoned approach. It's not a radical approach. They have promised, and thank God they promised, that they're capable of doing more outside the tariff realm. And that's a serious indication. If you're living in the Great Lakes, for instance, in the United States, you have to be concerned about who controls most of the passages for the goods flowing back and forth from the United States and Canada. So, keep our powder dry. You have to be worried about any possibility from this president, unfortunately. I mean, as I say, who would ever trust any agreement with this administration, given what they've done to their neighbor and ally and closest friend, Canada? It's ridiculous.
I'll leave it on that note. Mr. Burney, appreciate your insights as always. Thank you for making the time.
Vashi, all the best.
That's Derek Burney, former ambassador to the U.S.